we can see this is going to change a little bit. Here's an example from, like I said, I have access to the AI. So it doesn't always auto-populate. I'm using, again, for the example, right, Cox Automotive, right? But at the very top here in the desktop version, you can see it says get an AI-powered overview. So I generated that, and that's what this looks like. And you can see how it's completely pushed down all of the typical organic search results, right? And you can see it down here. I took a couple screenshots from mobile, and there's actually not even blue links anymore, right? So 10 blue links are gone, but don't be sad about it. We're going to talk about, how to get these featured snippets, these rich results, these snippets within search. So let's break down a little bit why things have changed so much in the last decade. In 2009, in May, you'll see a pattern here with May, rich snippets was first announced, and that's when they started adding reviews and people. So reviews, you can see in the search results, they have the little star ratings, right? That's your reviews. That was the very first thing that they did for rich snippets. Then they introduced video snippets, and then they introduced event snippets, right? So now we get some more detail that makes it look like an actual event, right? Like dates and maybe people involved in the event. Breadcrumb snippets, so rather than just a URL showing up, right, it actually shows you the hierarchy of the website. So you can see okay, not just the homepage, right, but this page lives under cars for sale, right? Shopping snippets, this is just more features within the product, so beyond just the review snippets. Recipes, I'm sure a lot of people have come across those, right? And I have this highlighted because this is where we're gonna focus our attention. These items in orange, these all relate to this new version of Google, right? Where we have moved from strings to things, which is exactly what they announced when they announced the knowledge graph, again in May 2012. Like I said, lots of Mays, because that is when they do their Google I/O conference, and they just had their Google I/O conference, and that's when they announced the AI experience. And then thankfully I was in the early beta and got it rolled out last week. So February 2015, health info snippets. So that's where the knowledge graph, right, is used to provide you information directly in the search result. That's here's your symptoms, here's maybe some remedies, right? When should you see a doctor? All of that's right there in the search results. Then they decided in May of 2016, right, to change the name from snippets to cards. And finally, in December of 2017, we have rich results, and that's the name. So all of those things are the same. Snippets, cards, they're rich results, or SERP features, which is what we call them. And because there are, we'll get into it again, but rich results is the name that Google gives theirs, that you actually can change things on your page, which we're gonna get into, to show up these rich results. But then there are also other features on the search results page that are not affected by rich results data. So another May, frequently asked questions and how to. And I brought this one up because how to structured data is something that I was building for a company that I was doing SEO for before it was actually picked up by Google. And so this is why we're going to talk about schema right there in June, because schema has a ton, hundreds, thousands, maybe millions even, of different types of schemas, and not all of them are rich results necessarily, but Google might pick them up, right? Or other bots might understand that schema. And yeah, I meant to say too, we've heard from people this week about, talking to internal stakeholders, talking to clients. I'm gonna teach you how to talk to bots, right? So, like I mentioned a little bit, structured data, that's what we provide to bots in order to help them understand our language. Structured data is just data about data, microdata, right? It gives that semantic meaning, it reveals the underlying, meaning. And schema is the one that we're gonna focus on. There's other types of structured data. Anybody in social media and use open graph tags? or Twitter cards. That's a type of structured data. Schema, which I said we're focusing on here, schemas are types of things, types of, entities, which we'll get into. And they are made up of properties. And then there's different ways to write your schema, so the different types of code, those are called encodings, and we'll focus on a couple, but really just one. All right, so I'm not gonna read this to you, but if you didn't follow along, Bluey was that little sad-eyed puppy dog looking at you about the 10 blue links being gone. She's my theme throughout. I love Bluey. My daughter loves Bluey, but probably me more, actually. So if you don't know Bluey, you're gonna learn a little bit about her this time, okay? But yeah, you can see with us, right, like we understand probably, this is talking about Bluey, the show over here, right? This is talking about Bluey, the character, right? This is called disambiguation. Vocab word. I don't have it in the slides, so write that one down if you need it. But basically, like, right, text language is ambiguous. So when we think about ways that we can make it less ambiguous, we have formatting structure. But even then, that's ambiguous, right? If we put a title in AP, we use italics, right? If we do a title in APA, we use quotes. So there's no universal language for that necessarily, right? Like you have to understand the underlying format. So that is where schema comes in, but we'll get to that. So if we don't have structured data, right, this is how a computer recognizes. This is natural language processing. This is the underlying element to all of your AI that is blowing up right now, natural language processing, right? So it is doing, basically, it's taking proper nouns, right? And this is called named entity recognition, NER. And it's trying to recognize entities, which are basically proper nouns, right? Things. This one, there's lots of different models. I have all of the links in here. And I have my slides in PDF format on my website. So if you just go to that website, you can grab them. I have a purple banner up at the top with the link there. So you can see these little labels. So it's saying Bluey a person and Bluey a person. Wrong, right? Like that Bluey over there is not the person. That's the name of the TV show, right? That entity is not the person, right? Bluey wasn't created by Joe Brum, like Bluey the actual dog, right? Bluey the TV show was. Okay, so, go back, yes. So like I said, speaking the same language, right? APA, right? Try to disambiguate things with that, but we need one complete language. And there were different types of structured data. Like I said, there's open graph, there's rich cards, those are specific. But with search engines, I had pointed out right in June, I think it was 2010, that they launched Schema. They did not do that alone. They launched it with other search engines. They launched it with Yahoo, and they launched it with Yandex, which Yandex is big in like Russia and Europe. So that is creating that universal language. And with Bluey, this is one of my favorite episodes. This is Camping, season 1. Bluey meets Jean-Luc at a campground. He only speaks French. Bluey only speaks English, right? So they don't know how to communicate. But play is like a universal language, right? They're trying to get Bandit over there, Bluey's dad. He kind of makes like a grunting noise while he's grabbing the water. So she's like, oh, it's a wild boar. And Jean-Luc's like, sanglier, right? Like, so they don't know that they're kind of like saying the same things. But when it comes to trying to actually get him, they both try the same attack, right? She's telling him, go around this way, and I'll go this way, and they both go the same way, right? Because they're not speaking the universal language. So the next day, they team up and they use that rock, and they plot out a map of like, this is what you're gonna do, this is what I'm gonna do, and now they know, right? They have that language. So that's what schema is for us, to computers. So now we have structured data, right? Natural language processing is when they have unstructured data. So we're leaving it up to the computer to decide. Some structured data. I know, it's an eyesore. Don't worry, so this is the exact same paragraph that I had earlier. And as I said, schemas are types. So if we look at this, and first of all, let me tell you, so HTML tags, most are open tags, right? And then they close, whoa, with this slash. So everything inside of this P2P is a paragraph. And so everything inside of it is what we call nested, okay? So everything within this paragraph tag is nested within this item type, right? That's your schema. It is a TV series. That's our type. The name, the property, item prop, the name of the TV series is Bluey. The creator property is Joe Brum, but he's also his own entity. He's own a type. He is an item type of person. And we could add some other details there if we had more information about him. But this is all directly embedded in your HTML, right? This is micro data. This is the preferred version, much more human readable, right? JSON LD, JavaScript object notation, linked for linked data. The LD is, and that's linked data is just another way for saying structured data. So this is exact same stuff that I had in there, right? The creator of Joe Brum, he's his own entity type of person. The providers, I had a few others listed there, but I just have the one. So it's in this curly brace versus an array. Array is a list of items. So we have all the list of the characters there. Any questions? Lot to cover, no? Okay. So, as I said, microdata, you have to embed it directly into your HTML. There is no tricks with that. JavaScript object node LD, JSON LD, it can be hidden, right? It's inside of it's in a script tag elsewhere in your code. So it can be invisible. That doesn't mean you should be adding things that are not on your page. That will actually get you penalized. I found one in September. There was again, automotive. There was I think it was Mini Cooper, not to call them out, but yeah, a vehicle that had 10 billion reviews. No, and it just launched in March of 2022. Nah, I don't think so. They gave themselves a 4.5 rating though to like be a little humble, right? So they're not showing up anymore, by the way, with their review snippet. And it looks like they actually removed that whole thing from their website, probably because they got penalized, I guess. So don't do invisible content. That is very bad. Just funny context, like, captions aren't that funny, but this is Bingo, Bluey's sister. She's younger, and she's asking the question that all parents want to hear, right? Like, where was I before Bluey, like before I was born? She answers it herself. Ooh, I was invisible, right? Like, but don't do invisible content. It has to be shown to the users for you to write the schema for it, okay? All right, so I'm gonna transition because we have a lot of time, right? So we're gonna do an actual example. And another fun, captions don't do it justice, but this is in the latest season obstacle course. Bluey is trying to beat Bandit at an obstacle course. And, Chili is the mom right there. And she's like, there's only one thing you can do to beat him. And the girls are like, cheat. And she's like, no. I mean, practice. So we're going to practice, right? And like I said, that previous slide, no cheating. We're not going to do invisible markup. All right. Okay. Can you still hear me okay? All right. This is probably not going to be the smoothest transition here, but we're going to bring this guy over. Okay. Oh, geez. This is going to be very hard for me to do from here. Okay. So you're probably saying to me, Danielle, I don't write code. Can you hear me still? I don't write code. Like, how am I going to do this, right? Like, I don't speak bot. But we have a lot of tools, and there are a lot of tools out there that can help you to do that. This is one of them. Merkle is a pretty well-recognized SEO and other things, digital agency. So I do trust that they're going to provide us with some good schema. Again, these links are in the PDF on my site if you need them. But, oh boy, such a hard angle here. We're gonna try and do event markup. So we can do integrate, and bear with me because I cannot see the screen, and it's everybody's nightmare to be typing in front of a room full of people. So we'll just do read. I don't know if this is correct, but whoop, w.edu. The description, marketing, communications, whoops, conference, right? And yeah, let's get this thing out of the way. So now we can see that this is starting to populate over here, and it's adding, right, like it's adding our information from our form fields into these JavaScript object. So the thing about JavaScript object notation is you have key or attributes and values. So everything that we're putting into a form, right, that's a value. You're putting a value into a form field. That's generating the value on your JavaScript key. So name, you know, oh, that was the image URL, whatever. We'll just add like, be like a ChatGPT here and just make up a URL that looks about like what a URL would look like, because yes, it does that. Integrate. Okay. We need to add a start date, right? June. Need to add a start time, no. Okay. All right. We'll go from there. They also have status, like if you had to change, like it got canceled, so that would show up, or if it got moved online, that would also show up. You can add a performer. In this particular instance, they only offer one, so we do a person, right? That's the type of person. And then the name, let's do our keynote for tonight, Brandy. So this is only offering us the one, but you could add an array. Maybe not in here, but yeah, not in here. But you can create an array of and list like multiple performers, right? In these case, speakers. So let's just copy this, if it'll let me go. Oh boy. No, I don't want the whole page. Okay. So now I'm gonna go over to this. I'm hoping this is the testing tool. Yes. So this is the schema.org testing tool. There are two testing tools that Google runs both now, right? Like Schema, as I mentioned, was created by Google, Yahoo, and Yandex, and then it's basically open source, so people can add schemas, right? And then they're kind of like somebody should be moderating it, right? But open source can be a little like who's actually putting the work in. So Google took over to keep this alive, so that you could test schema beyond just the rich results, right? Like I mentioned, Google has just the things that show up as a rich result, which uses structured data schema. But then there's other schemas that you can use, and potentially Google or other crawlers will start recognizing them. And so like I said, I was building that before it was accepted, and then like later that month they started using it, and so I was already ready to go and had like awesome featured snippets right in the search results. So we'll see a little bit of those later. All right, so we have a code snippet rather than a URL, but we can test URLs later in this workshop. So let's see if this authenticates. 0 errors, 0 warnings, and now you can see, right, like this is even more human readable of our JSON. Questions, comments? No? Okay. So let's go back to our presentation. So in your HTML, you can put it in the body of your HTML, pretty much anywhere. Just know that like as your page is rendered, so like as the crawlers read your page, as your browser reads the page, if you put it low on the page, it'll take longer for it to read, and so other things could block it from showing up. So typically people put it higher up in there. And you can even put it in your head, but in like the head tag of your HTML, but typically do the body, and most people have access to the body with like a content management system. So yes. Yeah, I mean that would be more for like WVU to put it on their site, or yeah, if you could be like, oh, here's places that I'm speaking at, and you can make like a list of those. And there's another rich results like carousels, right? So those use list items. So then you kind of get into nesting, like I mentioned with the HTML, right? You can also nest your structured data as well. So other question? Yep. Yeah. So there are different, right? Like you mentioned, I've done some stuff with Shopify for clients, but I can't remember doing any structured data on them. So there might be different add-ons, plugins, and some of them are limited. Like I don't know, do we have a lot of WordPress users? Yeah. So Yoast is one that like I've always used, that also incorporates like this. But even then, I would have clients, and I've read their documentation like completely about their schema, and you can go in and modify it. Some places don't let you modify it as much. Like Wix has had like that stereotype that they're not gonna. I think they're improving though. But yeah, different content management systems. You're just gonna have to like maybe get with, if you're not a developer, like get with your developer, have them read the development API documents, and they can see if there's like some flexibility with it or not. Or if there's not flexibility, like I said, you can just add, like have them add the script somewhere in the body for you. So right after schema was introduced, 2010, like the next thing that I had on our evolution timeline was the knowledge graph. And this is where, as I said, when Google introduced it, they say we're moving from things, from strings to things, right? So instead of thinking of queries and keyword stuffing a page, right? Now we're thinking of topics and things, entities, okay? So knowledge graphs takes those entities, right? Remember when we saw that paragraph and had that named entity recognition from the computer? That was that unstructured data. Those are entities, right? Like this is Bluey as a person. This is Australia as a region, right? Some different models have cardinality, right? Like is it north, south, east, west? They have dates and times. Those are all potentially entities, and then they have their labels on them, like person and things. Knowledge graphs are made up of nodes, which is your entity, the edges, which is like how it connects to another entity, and the label of what that connection means. So these typically require you to create some sort of rules, right? A relationship rule, and then potentially you could train a model to like start connecting things. But here's another example. This is diffbot. And I put that same paragraph that I've been using, right, that describes Bluey the show. And this is what it output as like the visual knowledge graph for that paragraph. And you can see a knowledge graph is where we start connecting entities that don't even exist in the original text, right? So this is where we start getting into some of that natural language generation. It understands what are important entities within the piece or the prompt, right? That's natural language understanding, which is all part of natural language processing. It understands what's the most important pieces of this text, and then it can also start linking to other entities form that response, right? That generate that response. The one thing that's missing here is they don't have Bluey as the TV show. So that would technically be like LinkedIn because it's on Disney Plus and it's on Disney Junior and it's on somewhere. I thought they had ABC Kids, but they don't. But you can see here, like, so this is the node, Bingo. Bingo is the little sister, and all of the edges are going, and they're all like family members. And then the edge here, the label is they're all reside in Australia. So, oh, and I meant to say too, like I said, if your knowledge graph is going to expand beyond just what you have in like the prompt, which was that paragraph. I didn't talk about Marvel, but you know, it knows that Disney is also Marvel, so it's kind of like 6 degrees of separation a little bit, right? How does Bluey relate to Spider-Man? So knowledge graph here, this is basically what they are built off of is knowledge bases. The knowledge graph is like Google's term for their knowledge base. There's tons of different knowledge bases. This is Ringguard. So they have pulled all of these different knowledge bases and they pull the entity IDs for all of them and say all of these IDs for these different databases reference this one entity, right? And here's all of the information. Here's all the properties of this entity, right? So this kind of looks like our JSON LD in a readable format, right? We have our key instance of and our value, it's an animated series, right? What's the type? TV series, animated series. Who uses Google Trends? Nobody? Okay, few hands. Okay, good, good. You should be using Trends. And they will help you understand entities. Like you can get in Python and code, and I've done this, like query the knowledge graph API, right? But if you don't know Python, you don't know your entity IDs, right? You have to get an API code, you have to pay money, right? Like nobody wants to do that. This is how you can do it for free, a little bit, right? So to total nerd stuff, like probably don't really need to know this, but I think it's cool. Well, first of all, when you query something in Google Trends, make sure that you are looking for a topic or an entity, right? So this says search term. So that's a keyword, that's a string. We want the thing, right? We want the topic. So that's where we're seeing here. Now it's naming the type, right? The type of, the schema. What's the schema? An animated series, and even Australian animated series. So that's the one we pull up. So now we have an entity, and I know I have an entity because in the string is the entity ID, which was back here. Where am I not seeing the Freebase ID? It's very pixelated. Okay, right here, Google Knowledge Graph ID. And it is Google Knowledge Graph ID, and I'll get to that. So it starts with a slash, and then a G or an M, and then a slash, and then numbers and letters, right? That's the entity ID for the Google. %2f is encoding a backslash, because a backslash is a special character, right? We use it elsewhere. So when we have it in that string, it's encoding it. So just think of the %2f is a backslash. So then it's G, backslash, and then 2f11G, right? G. Oh, well, maybe not the same. Yep. Yeah. 11G9, yeah. So it's the same entity ID, right? We know we have an entity. Like I said, total nerd stuff, you probably don't need to know it, but Google bought Freebase, which is a knowledge base that existed in 2010? 2012. And then in 2015, they basically started to sunset it. So anything that exists after Freebase has G for the Google Knowledge Graph. So it starts with that G. But anything that was in Freebase starts with an M. So it's /M/, like I said. Probably don't need to know that, but nerd stuff. Okay, so when we look at an entity, a topic, who actually like scrolls down on trends? Do you look at this stuff down here? Okay, good. Because this is telling us like how it's linking other entities, right? How it's linking queries within our entity. So this can give us an inside scoop of like how it understands this topic, right? Disney Plus, it's a production company, right? It's the production company for this show. Muffin is the name of a character. Although that topic's probably not about Muffin the character, right? This is that disambiguation. You get into it, it's probably a recipe, right? And then here, just some fun stuff about trends. This is showing the top related topics, and you can adjust that, and then you can see rising. So this one's showing rising. So anything here, I was looking at just the past day. So this means that in one day, this query had a 500% increase day over day. Whatever your time range is up there, this is how much that query has increased in that previous time range. Breakout means that it's a more than 5,000% increase. So doing keyword research, check out these entities, check out the related queries. Okay, so the knowledge graph, our structured data, this is all feeding these rich results. Again, this is Google's term. Rich results covers those rich snippets, rich cards, all the same thing. These are our search features that go beyond just a title and a description and a URL, right? They're going to be very different sometimes between mobile and desktop. Stat is a rank tracking software. Moz purchased them a while back. It's one that I've used, that we use at Cox Automotive. This is showing, like, early in 2023, they were kind of checking, I think it was 20,000 different queries to see what was the most prominent search features. And you can see here, so like overall is the yellow, and then between the two types of devices, desktop and smartphone, we have some differences. So frequently asked questions was like, drop in here, and it was still pretty high on desktop, right? And that was in April. The search engine optimization world, right? SEOs, we're all talking about how like frequently asked questions were not showing up on mobile anymore. And then in May, they started to drop. So this came out before May. Those started to drop on desktop too. So some things happen first one way or the other. Know that they're very different, and that can change your click-through rates, right? Like if the search results look very different between those experiences, that can change like how you're presented and where you're ranking. So keep that in mind. Okay, so now I'm saying SERP features, because this is going to look at things beyond just those rich results that Google is talking about. If we think back to that scrolling pixelated mobile device, we had 8 organic because not ads, features shown in that forward mobile result. Search refinement, which are those little bubbles, like if you start to scroll, the little bubbles at the top. So like things like Ford vehicles, Ford organization, right? That'll create another query. So it's just taking you to a more modified query. That is where Google is trying to get disambiguation, right? Ford is a super broad topic. So it wants to know, like, what do you want to know about Ford, right? So it's showing us search refinement to try and figure out what it is that we want, what our intent is. Intent's coming up. Knowledge panels, that's the knowledge graph panel, right? Site search box, that is where it shows a search within their result so that you can search on their site. Just found out recently though, the search boxes show up that are not for your site search. We have that for KBB because we don't have the structured data for a site search box. So it shows up and it says search for, or search, there's different text, but like search on Nordstrom.com or search within. And so if it's like slight little, language, right? Slight little difference in the language inside the input box. And so for KBB, our site search box will just create a query in Google that uses a site search operator, literally site, and then the domain. So site:kbb.com, and then whatever your query was. So it'll only pull up results that use the domain KBB. Site links. So those are usually on these broad branded terms. You'll see those where you got your main, your main result, which is typically the homepage, and then you're going to have other results. The good old days. We could pick site links back in the day. Can't do that anymore. Google doesn't allow that. So that can really change, again, your click-through rates. So if it just randomly shows some part of the site that hasn't been showing in your site links, you could see a huge uptick in impressions for that page and like no clicks, right? So that's typically a sign of it being in site links. Map pack, right? That was the local aspect. People also ask, this is where people also ask, like I said, frequently asked questions were tanking in April, and then they fell off on desktop on May. People also ask, was taking them over? And you know why? My theory was because they were preparing for the AI experience, and basically all of the questions inside of people also ask are now your prompts to converse with the bot. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later. Top stories, that's our news carousel, way better, prettier than those like blue links within the news stories that we saw in the very first search. And then Twitter. People use Twitter still. I have my Twitter profile here, right? Don't really get on it though, but feel free to tag me if you find something insightful. So Twitter, maybe you're thinking about leaving it, right, for your brand, or if you already have. The thing about it though is like that's giving you kind of like owned, shared, property real estate in search when you have your branded search. So just keep that in mind. Like that's another owned, shared property for you in your branded searches versus like Trustpilot or something showing up maybe, right? Like we don't want them showing up sometimes. Okay, so yeah, just with Twitter, yep. And I meant to say too, I wouldn't be surprised if they drop that because like Elon's asking like $40,000 a month for the API. So I mean, Google could probably easily pay that, but I don't know if they will. So yeah. So SEMrush, has everybody heard of SEMrush? Use that for rank tracking and stuff. Yep, they just like in April, I think, updated the number of SERP features that they track. So they have 38. Roast is not a rank tracking software. They are a UK SEO agency, and they have for like 5-6 years now been keeping a running list of all of the search features. I think they also include ads. I put 40. It's showing a little bit more than that if you go to that link, but some of them are like deprecated and kind of like meshed into another one. So that's kind of like 40 active ones. There's 43 that are tracked by Stat. That's the one thing I really love about Stat. Stat has its limitations and it's not the most useful user interface. But yeah, they have a lot of search features that they track. Some of them are deprecated again, like Google doesn't show them, but they have them in their history, right? So, and then here is what we're gonna dive into, right? These are all recognized by Google. Structured data features, right? You use structured data, that language to speak to the bot to help earn the rich results. So these are the 30 that they create rich results for. So again, there's other features that you can't use structured data to get, like people also ask, right? Those exist, but you don't use structured data to get there. Just kind of luck, right? So all of the things that we're gonna cover after this, you can access in the search gallery link. I'm gonna breeze through them so then we can get into like diving into some examples. I hope you all have examples of like business queries and things like that that you wanna look at. Okay, first off though, some rules that I'm setting about how we're gonna look at these things. We're gonna use mobile only. The reason why is because in 2016, Google started mobile first indexing. So what does that mean? Indexing, there's like 3 different parts to search bots. They do crawling, so they have to find links, right? They have to find your site. Then indexing, like, do I like this page? Do I want to keep it, right? They don't keep everything. They don't keep a lot. And then ranking, right? So we're kind of talking about ranking for the most part with the search features. But so indexing, so it's crawling and indexing mobile pages first, right? And in 2020, they said that they were going to roll that out to all websites. I think just as of like the last month, they completely finished that. And there's just like a handful in Google terms, right, of sites that are still on desktop, and they're going to exist that way because they just don't have a mobile experience. But basically what this means is like 80 to 90% of your crawling on your website by Googlebot is going to be from a smartphone, but they do check desktop because they want to make sure that you're not giving a totally different user experience between the two. Same thing, like that's kind of like your invisibility thing, like don't do that. They don't want to see different experiences. They want to make sure that you're being consistent. So that's why they still crawl a little bit on the desktop version. And as of March 2023, worldwide device market share was 59% mobile, and that includes tablets, by the way, because tablet also shows the mobile search result, right? Like, think about how the search result shows up. That's how I identify mobile. Okay. I'm going with mobile, right? Like Cox Automotive, Kelley Blue Book, Auto Trader, we have about 71% of our traffic is mobile. But, you know, obviously all about your audience, right? Look at your audience. Don't just go by the benchmarks. Your audience could be like Granddad here. So this is another episode in season 3 called Phones. And Granddad gets out of an Uber, like a Lyft rideshare, and he's like, well, do I need to tip them? Like what? And Chili's like, no, it's all taken care of in the app, right? It's in the app. And then the girls are like, let's play restaurant. And so they go and set him down in a tent away from the restaurant. And they're like, you're renting this place from these people and you do it on the app, right? So he's like just sitting in this rented place, right? And he knocks a picture over there like, you better pay for that in the app, right? Like, and so he has his little phone and he's like punching things into the app. So then he's like, oh, well, what am I going to do? I'm getting hungry. So he walks over to the restaurant. And they're like, what are you doing? No, use your phone. You don't come here. Use your phone. So he calls, and they're like, again, aghast, like, why are you calling us? You use the app. So, like, you know, if you have people who are mobile device adverse, like Granddad here, then that's your audience, then, you know, feel free to use desktop. But we're going to use mobile here. Okay. Another thing, housekeeping before we like dive into search results again. Intent. So, what do you guys know about intent, right? Like, what are your intentions with my daughter, right? Like that kind of intent, like exactly that, right? Google wants to know what are your intentions here with this query. I've got this SEMrush link, and they have 4 that they cover, and I also want to call out local is kind of its own intent as well. They don't cover that one. So we're just going to cover those 4. Informational, those are queries that are asking questions like who, what, when, how, does. Commercial research, these are where people are trying to maybe like bring down their consideration set. They don't know exactly what they want. They're not ready to buy. They're like building that consideration set. So terms like best, cheapest, this versus that, right? Fastest. Transactional is like they're ready to buy. So buy, you know, buy online, this, buy Toyota Tacoma. For sale or near me, those indicate transactional. And near me, like I said, is transactional. Also local, right? It's going to get that local intent. Navigational. These are typically where they're just trying to get to a specific page. So they're typically branded terms. So can Google get intent wrong? Well, as I was saying with like Ford, the Ford example, they are trying to disambiguate things, right? So if you have too broad of a term, you'll get mixed intent. And that's exactly what this is here. Again, super pixelated, sorry. But I put in bandit, which is, you know, dad, Bluey's dad. And there's a movie bandit, which we see the knowledge graph for that, and another knowledge graph for the cast. But there's also like restaurants named Bandit in the West Loop of Chicago, which I'm not even by Chicago. I don't know why I got that. Bandit, the definition, right? Like, what is your intent, right? That's what it's trying to figure out. So just keep that in mind. Broad terms generally create a mixed intent. Also, while we're moving away from strings still do make quite a difference. One slight modification can completely change the intent. I asked my friends and coworkers for some examples when I was building this presentation. My friend was going to St. Louis and she wanted to get like a boat tour. So she put in the query St. Louis boat. And so it brings up the MS St. Louis, right? Like that's the entity of a St. Louis boat. But what she wanted, right, was St. Louis boats. Completely changes the way that the search results appear, right? So that is where, the slightest little bit can change the intent of your search, whether or not you want it to sometimes. So you might think that you are doing something for a keyword. You really always have to go to Google to see what it's doing. Like, what does it think the intent is? Example I have is I was doing something with like pottery, and there was like clay, red clay, something or another. I was like, oh, this has a ton of search volume. Like, we can do something with that. It was like Minecraft. No. Okay, another tip here is, as I was saying with the bandit example, right? Like, I'm not even in Chicago. Why is it giving me Chicago? Go incognito. That'll reduce the likelihood of Google personalizing your results based off of your browsing history. If you have an Android phone, it also knows your app history. Like, I try to turn that off, but it still knows. So incognito will help. And also, if you are on your Google account that is tied to a search console, that'll stop that from like showing you your results, which you might want to see your results like right there for the query, but that's going to change the way the SERP looks. So go incognito. Let me show you how that happens. All right. So I use Google Chrome. If you use Firefox and Edge now, thank goodness, Microsoft finally brought Internet Explorer into the modern age and uses Chromium as the like baseline for the browser. So it's the same kind of engine that runs Firefox and Chrome. So you can change to incognito by, and this is Chrome, like I said, going in here. It's pretty much the same thing for Firefox. New incognito window, right? And this will not use your account. It won't have any of your widgets or anything that you have in your browser, and it shouldn't pick up your browsing history in search results. And another tip I wanted to mention, like at work, we're probably using our desktop devices and maybe don't want to use our mobile phones if we're trying to look at things from like a mobile, right? If we're doing that mobile first aspect. So you can use the dev tools. So I right click, hit inspect, and this opens the dev tools, which is this little thing. I have it pop out, but on your first time, it will, and I have to drag it over there. So maybe I shouldn't have had it pop out. But this will like dock to the side of your browser. And this right here toggles mobile or not. And then you can pick the different device sizes you want. So this is just responsive, but you can go into the settings for your browser, at least for Chrome, and pick, so like I have a Pixel 6, but these are pretty old. So you can pick different devices to see. You just have to refresh to get the actual. This is not a great example because the schema test I don't think is really meant to be mobile, but yeah, that's how you can do that. And as soon as you close this DevTools, it will go back to desktop. So, cool. Okay. Wrong way. Okay. Yes. I meant to say that. No. So it uses your IP. So the only way you can really change that is if you use a VPN. So, and it'll show you. It used to be hidden, but it's much more visible now. And in fact, I think I like hid it in the dev tools in some cases, so that like I don't want creeps. Not like you guys. No, we're all friends here. But like if this goes out on the internet, I don't want people from the UK maybe that know me kind of knowing where I live. So, but yeah, it's like right at the top now. It'll be like results based off of your location, and it'll ask for like, do you want a precise location? And it'll try and make it even better with like, I don't even know what technology, but yeah, something. Okay, so I said we would go through these rich results that Google talks about, but there are other search features that you can get, like people also ask, right? That aren't a rich result from Google's standpoint that is affected by structured data schema. This is one of them. This is like, oh, the golden child for SEO. These are featured snippets, right? Like looking back to that rich snippets word, or sometimes we call it position 0 because it sits above like those 10 blue links, right? Whether those exist anymore or not. The thing about them though is we do have to worry about 0-click searches. So that is a note down there for the SEMrush blog. 0-click searches are basically like somebody comes, gets an answer right in the search result, and never comes to your website, right? I have an anecdote though. I actually saw massive traffic from a featured snippet. Super funny story. I worked for a hardware company, like Signature Hardware was the company, but we had like fireplace tools, and mostly we were known for farmhouse sinks and bathroom vanities, bathtubs, and our like fireplace stuff was on the outs. It was drop shipped. It wasn't very popular. But a poker got like massive traffic to the product display page, like directly to the product display page. I think this was like 2011. No, it would have been like 2018-ish. I'm like, why is this getting so much traffic? So we were in a feature, they generated a feature snippet for the query, what is a blowpoke? And the reason why it was so popular is because there was a Netflix documentary about somebody killing their husband, I think, right? With a blowpoke. He killed her, okay. So everybody was Googling, what is a blowpoke? And our product display page had a great definition of it. And so we were showing up and people were clicking on it. And people were sharing it on social media and tagging their husbands and being like, you should get this, or like whatever, so, jokes. But yeah, so it can result in clicks even when you don't think it would. That was totally bizarre, but yeah, lots of traffic from that, so. No, we didn't sell. Like I said, they were kind of on the outs anyways, but we got rid of fireplace stuff after a while. Okay, so let me try this. I really hope there's not like feedback, but featured snippets, for about 5 years now, everybody's like, oh, voice search, right? This is basically what fuels the responses in voice search. So let's give this a try. How old is Bluey from the TV show?
6-year-old. According to Bluey, Bluey is a 6-year-old blue heeler pup who loves to play. Her parents and teacher give her lots of time to practice, which means she's become very good at inventing games.
So yeah, exactly that response there. You'll notice that I said from the TV show, which I don't have up here. And that's because when I was practicing this, natural language processing with your voice is even harder, right? Because there's words that sound the same, right? So I had to disambiguate that because I was getting results for Bluey the show, like when did it launch, right? That was the age. Or if I said Bluey heeler, because they're the heeler family, it was giving me the typical age, like lifespan of a blue heeler. So that's why I disambiguated that with adding that little bit of from the TV show. So another thing with the featured snippets that I've been seeing a lot of, and again, I think this is leading up to the AI, right? Like it's sourcing multiple things from different resources on this, are these like, it's not one source, right? It's from sources across the web. So the top 10 Bluey episodes. Sleepy Time's good. Not my favorite though, but Dance Mode's really good. That's a fun one. Okay. So now diving into the, like I said, these are in that link from the Google developers. These are all of your structured data rich results. So you can you can add schema, and they tell you exactly how to do it in there. And then you can use the schema markup testing tool. You can use the rich results tool to test it. Educational is something that I have not done a lot of. I couldn't even find an actual result of this in search, so I just used the example that they have on their page. So it might not be a very popular search result feature, so just keep that in mind. Education Q&A, calculations and equations. I did have a client who had this, right, like marketers. I feel like relative change, you always have to like double check that one, right? So that's a 0-click search right there, probably, yeah. Math solvers, so actual like, oh man, have you all looked at queries and like you can tell when it's like a quiz or a test question, it's like super long. Yeah, so those are what these are, and especially the practice problem, like is this exact like ACT example or SAT example. So you can actually, add structured data to your page to tell the bot, this is what this is exactly. And then this is one that I did get an actual example of. It took a while though, and I couldn't find it on mobile. So this is a desktop one. So I beating out my rule of mobile first because it just didn't exist, but it did exist on the desktop version, and it kind of tells you like what the course is. It'll give you some of the lessons and things like that. So, again, search results, these featured snippets, or not features, rich results, rich snippets, basically are giving you a bigger footprint on there versus just like you might see the domain and the link and then a little bit of the description, right? So this is giving you a bigger footprint, and that's why we want that. And then there's also a data set. So there's actually a whole separate search. Like there's image search, there's news search, there's a data set search, which is just for research. So you can also use structured data for that specifically. News, I do have Discover thrown in here. This is not really search, and it's not generated by structured data. It's the wild, wild west of organic search. Again, it's not only an organic search. KBB, we broke our website back in March. We had an article that showed up in Discover. So Discover is going to show up in a mobile Chrome browser. So if you go to a mobile Chrome browser, open a new tab, and it has like Google, right? But then it'll show you stories maybe, and those are all Discovers based off of your browsing and your app history. I have a Google device, so I actually have this whole widget, like just within, if I slide to the left or whatever. And so I guess I was looking for ground beef recipes, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, it gives you stories based off of your history. So they're pretty relevant. And these, in the SEO world, Discover is like awesome. We love it because you typically get a ton of traffic. It's very short-lived, but it's hard to track, right? Because there is the mobile Chrome version, there's the app version. In any mobile device that has the Google app, it also generates there, or this widget version that I have in my Android device. So 3 different ways it presents, all mobile, so it's all gonna be mobile traffic. But because of that, it comes over as more than just organic search traffic. So some of those ways that it comes over, like this app might come over as a referral from Google API, or they show up as direct traffic. I don't like that. And that's why we broke our site a while back, because we had 1.5 million hits to one of our articles over a weekend. Weekends are typically like slow for traffic for us. So that was like, what is going on? And it wasn't all organic search because it was in Discover. So we had like 500,000 of those and 500,000, like almost evenly split. So about 750 in organic search and 750 in direct. So they're like, what is going on with direct traffic? Well, that was why. And I've been out for this, and I got a note from our news editor, and he's like, oh, we did it again. So I have to go tell the product analytics team, like, we're gonna see a lot more direct traffic again. So that's Discover, and it is basically news, video also shows up there. Speakable. Let me get my phone back out, sorry. But this one's cool, and it's in beta, but like I said, voice search I feel like didn't make it's as big of a thing as it was expected to be. Tell me the latest news on the Google algorithm. Oh, it didn't do it in voice. Typically does. Okay. But when it does, it'll take out, so where you have your structured data, it has a little snippet that's like an overview, and it'll read it back to the person. So that's good for devices like Google Home or Alexa devices, right? It'll actually say like a little snippet, and it'll be like, oh, according to Search Engine Land, right? And I know somebody in the SEO world, he writes for Search Engine Land, and he also has his own blog that he's had for, I think, 20 years now. Search Engine Roundtable. So Barry Schwartz, he tests this stuff, and he tested that, and I know I asked him like where it was so I could try it, and it was about Google algorithm, but it's not working now. He said, I don't know if it's working because it was pretty old. So yeah. Oh, also, do we have publishers, people who work for publishers in here? No. So subscription or paywall content, right? That's a tricky thing. Like, we don't want our users to necessarily see the whole thing, but there's ways around it, right? I'm sure we know them. And so we do want Google, though, to see it. So you can add basically like little snippet that says, here's this content that is available to you, so you can understand what this is about. And here's the content that we're going to show as like either a paywall, like you can see a portion of it, or they also have options for, you can show like the whole article, and maybe you set a limit like 1 or 2 or 3 articles, and then they're blocked. So you can set that up in structured data as well. So those are all your news rich results. Local, again, this is run by the local business schema, but what's really going to fuel this is Google My Business, which I forget now. Google Business Places, is that what it's called now? Yeah. So yeah, that's basically like claiming your local. If you like have a local business and then you see something down here that's like, claim this knowledge panel, do that if that's your business. So yeah, this is a knowledge panel, right? Knowledge graph, but it's local as well because it has the map built in. So yes.
On that one, when your traffic is overloading your site, what do you do?
Oh, well, it didn't really overload our site, but it was just a matter of confusing our product analytics team because that's unexpected traffic. Like, and news is going to do that. Like, it ebbs and flows. But as far as like, if your server, you need to have a reliability engineer, and you need to have them on call so you can be like, can we get another server spun up or something? Like, yeah. Otherwise, they're going to get 500 errors or things of that sort, and that's getting into this whole aspect of crawling. Like, if Google's trying to crawl your site and can't access it, it'll get an error and might not keep crawling your site then. So we don't want that. Okay, multimedia, I'm gonna like blast through this because there's a lot. So they have the book. Basically, all of these are doing knowledge panels, software apps, right? Like, I'm on Android, so it's giving me Google Play, but you might have the Apple Store. This one covers a lot. Again, we've got video, short form, shorts. We've got products. We've got another video thumbnail like built into. We've got images, and I don't see the Twitter carousel. So I didn't have an example for Twitter carousel, but we did have it on the Ford example. So, and I did want to say, so images, basically you are supplying, you can do schema for images, and the rich results page from Google for images includes another option, and that is, I have to look it back up. It's IPTC, because I can't remember the order of those. But that is metadata that's embedded directly into the image, but that's probably harder to do, so you can use structured data and not have to worry about that. That metadata will give information like, who is the creator of this image, like who's the photographer. So if you are like art gallery or you are like a Shutterstock, right? Like that's important information that you want to share. Transactional intent, right? Like the different rich results that you can get is the review snippet. So like while we are not a transactional site for AutoTrader, you can't directly buy it on the site. We do have review snippets for our product, like vehicle pages, cars, Honda Civic for sale. We have review snippets from KBB reviews on there. Products, it goes kind of fast, but like that one right there with Bingo, you can see maybe not, definitely the review snippets, but they also added pretty recently, you can add information about your returns, you can add information about your shipping. So this is all stuff that you can put into your structured data schema, but product also runs off of Google Merchant Center. Does anybody use that? That is a data feed, and it's like a separate, another separate tool. You've got Webmaster Tool, well, Search Console, you've got my local business, you've got Merchant Center, you got Publisher Center if you're a publisher. So yeah, just another tool. They are changing Merchant Center. I don't remember the name. I don't know if you remember the name, Shane, from Marketing Live. No. Merchant Next, maybe, something like that. So it sounds like maybe they don't need you to do as much with Merchant Center, and they're just gonna like start pulling information from your website. So that's where having the schema, even stuff beyond what is in the rich results, right? Like having schema, going to the schema and looking up all of the possible properties, not just the ones Google tells you, could potentially give you much more like richer information to them. So I've just broadly categorized these as guides. So events, we talked about, we kind of looked at structured data for that, right? It has the beginning and the end date and the name and location, which I didn't put into our structured data. There's an additional one that's separate, but it's events markup. It just is a different type where it's a home activity. This was with COVID, they kind of added that so that people could know that they could do it at home, like virtually, right? So like yoga or something, right? Like live streaming. How-tos, like I said, these were awesome. I don't see them as often anymore. They're definitely getting overtaken by the search generative experience, the AI now. So keep that in mind. Recipes, I'm sure everybody knows recipes. They show up a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's carousel. Sometimes it's maybe like 6 results there even. So job-related ones, you got job postings, you've got the estimated salary, which we can see here from different resources, an employer aggregate rating, which are those ratings up there. Haven't done a lot with jobs either, but that's all structured data. And then what I'm calling like our typical organic search result, the blue link, right? Those are like adding dynamic stuff to that. Breadcrumbs, which was one of the first additions there on the timeline. They probably really don't need you to write it out, but it's not that hard to do. Logo, right? Those will show up in the knowledge graph. The site link search box, which I talked to you about how if you don't give it that information, you could still potentially show up there, but it's gonna just create a site query in Google for your site. Frequently asked questions, like I said, these are being overtaken by PAAs. People also ask. And it's also because SEOs abused it. Like we put FAQs on everything. And John Mueller is one of Google's search lead. Like he's like I'm trying to think of the word, like a developer relations person for the SEO community. And he basically came out and was like, yeah, like when you muddy the waters a bit, we have to like roll back and kind of see like what's the most important ones to use versus having everybody have them all the time. So that's why frequently asked questions have dropped this year. Carousels, basically it's just using a list item structured data, and you can put all kinds of different things in carousels. There's an example for movies. So if you were like listing the top best animated movies, right? Like you could put them in that and then get a carousel potentially. And then fact check is one I had not seen, but I'm sure COVID was another big reason for this one. So that I had to just use the example that they gave. But yeah, has anybody seen this in there? No, I was just talking about, and it just started rolling out yesterday. Another thing that they announced at Google well, at the time of Google I/O, not during the demo, is they're adding perspectives. So I don't know if you all heard, like last fall, people were saying Google's dead, TikTok's overtaking it because Gen Z, like 40% of Gen Z would rather go to TikTok to hear it, like get information than from Google. So this is basically their answer to that. And perspectives is going to be short form video, forums, like people have gotten in the habit of being like, how do I do this? Or what's the best blah, 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 Reddit, right? Because they want actual opinions. So that's their answer for that, is like all of that will be in this perspectives. And it's gonna be, like you see up here, news, image, videos, right? It's its own little thing, it'll be perspectives. So what will be interesting to see is if maybe we see some of these fact checks, right? Because somebody did comment like, well, if we have too many opinions, like with politics and things, right, that could muddy the water. So maybe they'll add that more on those perspectives. All right, almost there. There's the carousel. And yeah, that's all I have from a presentation standpoint, and like trying to get you, to understand what entity SEO is, how we tell them what our entities are versus letting them kind of run rampant with that unstructured data, natural language processing. But I want to hear from you. What have you seen in the wild? What do you want to know about in search? Yeah, or questions first too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So you're like a provider of the technology and other places are reviewing you. Yeah, so that is the great question because that gets into this like I mentioned with if you don't actually have the reviews on your site, should you be using them? Probably not. And that's something that we see in the automotive industry a lot is like Edmunds is a competitor with us, and they'll like have their review snippets added to dealers that work on their dealer platform, and it's an iffy game that you're playing. Like, so I wouldn't recommend it in those cases. Like, you just kind of have to do reputation management and like make sure that you have like a good presence with those tech bloggers, and then they'll probably end up being in that knowledge panel about like like if you have an entity, and then that's where you're going to want like Twitter presence, to have those other pieces that they can access about your brand that you own versus them. So yeah, I think it's absolutely fine for you to say like, we have 5 stars on, whatever, but to actually put the markup in there, that's really questionable. That's like that Mini Cooper. I mean, not as bad as the Mini Cooper one, but it's getting there. So yeah. Other questions? We'll go right back here first. Yeah, so I mean, SEO's favorite answer, it depends, right? And it really does. Like, there are certain intents that we see where we've definitely lost clicks, right? And if you go into those search results and look, like, you can understand why that's the case. Or like a good example is when you look up a make and model of a vehicle, right? That is a knowledge graph. And so in mobile, that's going to be completely Google owned for like definitely what's within the scroll when you first start. But where we can get a presence is we have the review snippet that shows up, and so sometimes we'll show up there and sometimes we won't. And that's where we'll see like, yes, we are going to get clicks, or no, we're not going to get clicks. And we have the review schema. There's like, that's where it's like, leave it up to luck. Like, hope that you get in there. But yeah, I mean, it's different, like industry, there's ebb and flow, like the way that algorithms have changed. What I've been encouraging is with like our reviews of vehicles, we're encouraging them to have an opinion. Like, don't be just like, these are the specs, right? Because that's where natural language generation is coming in. They're just taking a data set of like all of the vehicle specs and it'll just populate it out, right? So we have to be the experts and provide an opinion on it. So if you have anything where you're doing like a review, make sure you're giving that. There's another little like dynamic aspect to the blue link, like the or normal organic search result that I've seen lately is pros and cons in products. So it'll pull out from your page like here's some of the pros that they rec and here's some of the cons. So again, having those opinions like that is super important. Did you have like a specific industry that you were worried about or like yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that I mean that's where you get all the doom and gloom of like the zero click searches, but on the opposite side of it, it's like if you go into a search tracking like SEMrush or Stat or Ahrefs, they'll give you like search volume metrics, and people might be like, that only has 0 to 10, or it's like not any information about like how much search volume it gets in a month, and those actually like those can have really great growth because the thing again, that's just looking at a query, that's a string. If you target that and you can get shown up for that, like it might also build up that entity that it relates to. So other questions do we have? Yeah. Not that I've seen. I mean, I would like to say that it was frequently asked questions was doing it, but again, because it got abused, like everybody was doing frequently, I don't think so. And that's really where I think just knowing what your topic is, your entity, and understanding all of the potential like aspects of it. So going into trends and seeing what questions people are asking about it, and then you can do that, or going into a search result and looking at the people also ask and asking, seeing what questions people are asking, and just having really robust information. Like sometimes we have that short content, right? But other times we really want that long form content that shows that you really have all of the knowledge about that topic, that entity. So yeah, did you have a question? Yeah.
We talk about ambiguity and how it's like not something that we want to have while we're. But what if you happen to have like a common name, or you work for a company that has a like really common name? You look like big constructions, and you have 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
What resources can you use to kind of stand out as a crowd?
Yeah, so that's where like making sure that you hone in on whatever it is that your topic, your industry, which is that entity building basically, like knowing what your entity is. So like if you're in manufacturing, like speaking all about manufacturing. So then that way when people are disambiguating and they're like blah 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 manufacturing, like you own that, right? Because that is where you own that topic versus where it is about like pool supplies or something, right? So yeah, you just have to like become an expert on all of those topics within your industry and that's where I was showing with trends, like going in and seeing what are those related topics and building that out so that Google understands that you are this topic, you are this industry, right? So and another and I can show you actually, hold on. Okay, so with Google Trends, another thing that you can do, unless they've changed it recently, which I don't think so. So let's like this. I had a company that I worked with that did this. So this is looking again, like I said, at a search term versus a topic, right? A topic would show us the type of topic it is, like the schema, right? Like a TV series or even more specific, Australian animated series for Bluey, right? But you can go into these categories And this is also part of this natural language processing that Google does, is they categorize. And so you can see how they're categorizing. And then what you can do is, like, I go into autos and vehicles, and then I remove my query. Whoop. And now I can see, oh, it didn't do it for me. But typically it was showing like the results down here with related topics and related queries. So they're on to me, it looks like. But oh no, actually here, this is probably why. Let's give it a bigger range. Let's try that. There we go. So yeah, so now you can see like what are the topics that are trending within, like these are rising, right? So that I picked 12 months. So in the last year, year over year, they've grown like 110% for the Ford F-150, or can't even see, I don't know what is that? CarMax. No. Anyway, value, yeah. So you'll also see like with the queries, you can get like some really oddball things here. A lot of times with cars, we see celebrities a lot. So I imagine this is probably some sort of road racing incident or something. So yeah, anything in the wild you all want to see some of the more of the AI? Yeah, let's try to do that. Okay. So as I was saying, like the knowledge graph, right, has those knowledge panels. So let's see. Let's go to, the Miami Dolphins. Well, that one has news appended to it, so I don't want to do that. But like if we look at the Miami Dolphins, and this is, again, you're seeing the entity here, right, versus the queries down below. So entities typically have that logo or something attached to it. So I'm going to click on that. And this is how they're disambiguating for you even before you get into search, because they're giving you those entities or like modifiers right there in the suggestions. So, oh, is it on? Yeah, it is on. Okay. It doesn't even offer me an AI option here. This, I know it's on because it says converse, so this will take me into the chatbot and I can ask it questions, but like it's not even offering for me to turn on the AI because the knowledge panel is so like all encompassing here that they don't even really need it. And I'm glad that they're doing that. But there's some like the example that I had earlier, I feel like misses the mark on intent. So let's look at Ford again real quick. So like I said, here's where it's prompting me. Sometimes it doesn't prompt or just automatically generates. Oh, here's that search site links again. So this is also going to be one that will do a search modifier. So let's look at this real quick so I can show you this in the wild. See, so it's added site operator, site Ford.com. It's not searching their site. I do know that like Nordstrom, I think, was one of the examples that actually had the markup. So in this case, it says search Nordstrom, right? Search on versus search or something like one little bit of syntax change there. So this will actually take us to, I can't see what I'm typing. Okay. Yeah, so this will actually take us to their search result. So just note that little bit of a difference there. But let's go back to that Ford example. Again, broad term, I'm not giving it a lot of, it's ambiguous. So when I generate this, I would expect more of just like generally what's in the knowledge panel, but I guess because we already have it in the knowledge panel, what it's doing is it's giving me local intent. But like if I'm looking for, and actually they added a little bit more, like basically in the past it was, or maybe it was just for mobile, it was just like, here's Ford dealers local to you. So like kind of jumping the gun from like research, commercial research directly into transactional, like let's go to this Ford dealership and buy a car, right? Like I think the intent's a little off there. But this is also like, they understand like, are you interacting with this, or are you going to go down to the knowledge panel and just like get information? So that helps them understand like maybe what intents to serve with these. So anybody got examples they want to look at with the AI search? Questions like, like questions that come up with your business, like a query, long like question related query? Yeah.
So we just did a website migration, so all of our SEO is just chaotic. So we have a bunch of distributors. Our company is, our popular product is Levy, Buzzy for Shots. But we also have a dozen distributors that are Buzzy for Shots UK, Buzzy for Shots Australia, Buzzy for Shots this. So part of what we're figuring out is how do we become, not become, but stay the main priority, but also people that are saying, I'm in Australia, how can I buy from you? It's like, well, you could have typed in Australia. So that's part of the business case that we're dealing with.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as Google has gotten much better with natural language processing and translation, basically they've said that they're going to rank the best site whether or not it's in the language that they're searching in. So Australia, right, like English too, but your best bet is, are you using hreflang, which is like not only language but also the locations that you're in, so then that way it knows that these are well, if they're duplicate pages, right? Like this one is a duplicate of this, but we prefer this in the U.S. English, U.S. region English language, right? This is be the preferred one versus this one in Australia. So,
Historically, no.
okay, then that.
Migration is a lot tougher.
Yeah. Did you have an SEO on your migration? Because we need an SEO. Did you have an SEO when you did your no? Yeah, don't do that. Lessons learned. Oh, I meant to call out too. So this is the default view of the generative AI experience. And this is where a lot of people are getting really upset about like blatant plagiarism within. This is not a great example. Let me try and think of one. And look, so I haven't seen any of the ads show up above the generative AI. I have seen other people who have seen them. So I don't know what's up with that, but it's interesting again. So here, like fix a flat tire. What do you think my intent was? Commercial research, right? Like I want to, or just informational, like I want to do this. It's definitely leading heavily on in transactional, and that's kind of what they demoed as well, is that they're going to be showing a lot of products right there in the AI. So again, this is probably not the best example, but when you have a lot of text, if you toggle this view over here, this is where it will actually show you the sources for. So if you've been playing with Bing Chat, you might have seen like they do the little citations. They're like super hard to touch, and like I've touched some of them and been like, this actually references AutoTrader, and then it takes me to one of our competitors' sites. Like, so this is great. I feel like this is a great view. Some SEOs were complaining on Twitter about like blatant plagiarism, like a direct quote from somebody was put in there and like never mentioned the person who gave the quote in the snippet. And Danny Sullivan, who is like the spokesperson for Google search, he's the liaison, right? I said like there's the developer relations who help out the SEO guys. But he was responding and he's like, well, he showed this view and he's like, here's where you can see that is information, and it like drops you down sometime. It's beta, so yeah. So it drops you in and like shows you the direct quote that was taken. So they're like, well, why isn't that just the default view then to show those citations basically right there? So yeah. Any examples? Nothing in your business that you're Googling and you're like, why is this company showing up? Why does this look like this, right? Nothing? No? Okay. Well, we did pretty good on time, actually. We were pretty close to time. So yeah, if you want to take a look at any of these in like mobile, come find me later. I can show you that too. I have that in the mobile as well. So yeah, thanks all for listening, and I hope you walk away with something. Like I said, go to my website. It's digital-Danielle, and you can get get all the links because I have that PDF there. So all those tools for like the schema creation and schema checking, all right there. So thanks so much. Yes, shameless plug. Yes, if you Yeah, so that's going to be Google Analytics 4, not Google search, right? Different, but like I said, I lead data and analytics for the content and SEO team. So I have been in GA4. I worked with clients in GA4. So if you are dreading that July 1st date for your Google Analytics to move over to that, I am teaching a certificate course. It starts June 15th. Thank you, Kristen. Yes.
Marching Center next.
Yes, that's what I thought. Okay.